All right, and good evening, and welcome to the Tech and the Vet. We're doing our Mando Monday on Tuesday. First, I want to welcome Travis back from his nice little vacation in Vegas. But before we
Yes,
get into
yes.
Travis telling us about his great little Vegas vacation, let's first give a shout out to our sponsors here. First off, I want to thank the hashtag show for making a lot of this possible for us, and also our friends over at TRG Toys and Collectibles. Out at trgtoys.com. You can see their link down at the bottom of the screen scrolling by. Great stuff, Star Wars, Marvel, you name it. Also, just recently, we'll be carrying Sideshow and Hot Toy stuff pretty soon, so I'm pretty excited for that announcement there for TRG Toys and Collectibles. But again, Travis, welcome back from vacation. I know you had a tough time there in Las Vegas, living it up and
Yeah,
living the high
yeah,
life there. But
it was hard. It was hard to leave behind the cold and the snow for the bright lights and sunshine, but I managed while I was out there.
well, good. We're glad to have you back here and ready to talk. So, obviously, we've got a lot to talk about. We had one of our longest episodes this past week of The Mandalorian, and it's pretty interesting because when it started out, I was pretty excited the way this episode was really going, and then it kind of slammed on the brakes really hard, and I'm going to say really hard, like Andor hard. But it was kind of shocking for that. So let's talk a little bit before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. Let's talk a little bit about what we did start off with. Now, obviously, Bo-Katan, Mando leaving Mandalore and heading back to Bo-Katan's lovely castle, as we see here. But we realized pretty soon that they're not alone. Now, this was a pretty intense scene. I was not expecting this full out, bombardment from the Empire. Were you shocked with that? And like, what? How were you when you first saw that?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely. I feel like it's been a little while if you factor in the Book of Boba Fett episodes of the Mandalorian heavy episodes, but it's been a while since like the Empire's kind of shown up in the Mandalorian sort of storyline. So it was really caught me off guard to suddenly see, hey, there's some TIE interceptors
Yep.
here. Oh, and now we have some TIE bombers. Um, Definitely a lot of action. It was a really cool sequence of all the flying, and basically it was Star Wars Top Gun there for a little while, so it was really cool
Yeah.
to see. Especially given we may never see Rogue Squadron, the film
Yeah.
now. So this is, I guess, the closer we're getting to some dogfighting. And you know, it was a really cool scene, and it was interesting too. The comment that Bo-Katan made that this is a little more than like your average Imperial warlord would have,
Yeah.
and it kind of just left it at that. So, are they teasing Moff Gideon? Are they teasing Thrawn potentially somehow? I mean, there's a lot of ways this could go. So it's kind of a cool way to start to set up what future things might hold for kind of the antagonist side of the story here.
Yeah. And it was surprising because it was kind of like they knew, like the Empire knew what was going on. They knew where they were
Mm-hmm.
bombing. It wasn't no, oh, we just found this place and now we're blowing it up. They knew it. You could tell this was some strategery, and it was
Yeah.
ready to go and everything there. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And like you said, yes, I think we are setting up for something here soon. We don't know what. Obviously, there's some rumors that we're going to see possibly in this episode or the next one a character from Star Wars Rebels here pretty soon. So I'm anxious to see if those rumors are true. And then on top of that, we just got the storyline just really was taking off really quick there. It was just so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously Mando and Bo-Katan take off to go for some safety. And then that's when the story kind of really hits the brakes and slows down on us and really kind of goes into the next phase and what I call the Andor phase of the Mandalorian episode here. But we
Yeah.
get reintroduced to we know Dr. Pershing's out there. We get introduced to him. He's obviously in an amnesty colony on Coruscant, which I thought was
Mm-hmm.
really interesting how they kind of set this up, and how he was speaking that he was wrong, from doing this research for the Empire and everything there. Um, what were your thoughts when we went right to this? And everyone who's out here watching too, I'd like to know your thoughts as well. I mean, did you like how this went from high speed bombing to this next part of the storyline, and then what did you think about how he is in this amnesty program? And then we'll go a little bit more, obviously, into that here in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, the amnesty program I thought was kind of an interesting touch. Hadn't really been something that had been brought up, I think, in previous Star Wars canon, as far at least in live action. Maybe it's been in the books and some of the comics. I don't know. Definitely has a very, World War II Nazi scientists defecting over to the United States to help build up, science programs and things. Sort of a feel to it. I'm sure that's not, a coincidence. I'm sure it's, kind of takes some inspiration from that kind of programs and stuff they had back then in the 40s. I was glad to see Pershing back. I was glad to kind of see them start to tell that story. I personally, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit more. I wish they would done more of like show a little bit, then maybe jump back to what Mando and Bo-Katan had going on, and then come back, kind of alternate a little bit before it, because the Mandalorian side of it, where we need someplace to go. Hey, I know a guy, or I know a place. Let's go. Like I was like, all right, cool. This is gonna go somewhere further. But it took another like 35, almost like a full episode length, like 30 some minutes to get to the next part, because the episode was, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a long episode. There's gonna be tons of action, and no, the length is because we had this big interlude here of the Pershing story on Coruscant. But it was cool to see Coruscant in live action too. I'm not gonna be one of those people that's like, oh, it's too slow. There's, I get it. There's character development. I think they dropped a lot of breadcrumbs and Easter eggs during this sequence to kind of set up for what's going on out there. You have to kind of just, focus and pay attention. But definitely was a high speed slam on the brakes and then rev it back up, I guess, towards the end of the episode.
But then, we get this amnesty program, and then we also notice that there's another person from Moff Gideon's ship now in here as well. And before this episode, she was known just as the comm officer, but now we actually have a name for her. Elia Kane, and it's interesting because this character, we really kind of, it was obviously kind of subtle hints that this character was going to have a bigger part sometime in the Mandalorian, just because of how they kind of focused on her for those brief seconds. If you ever notice, we get those brief seconds of things, and all of a sudden we got to focus on a character. But I was really shocked how much we actually focused on her. Well, obviously I was less shocked as we kept going into this episode, but again, we had this whole relationship building part, and like I said, we had our Andor. I just really kind of wish, how you said it, I wish we would have went back and forth a little bit instead of just having this long pushed out story, because this has been the longest episode so far. But now, we're in this story. So what did you think when she popped up, and then this relationship that they're trying to build?
Yeah, I mean, when that character showed up, I was like, oh, that's them. I remember them and being focused on, and to your point, almost focused on so much that you knew that they were going to probably show up, or there's a reason why they'd be like, focus on this person so much. But yeah, I mean, I think almost kind of from the get-go, I was like, okay, is she who she says she is, kind of a thing? Because coincidentally, and that's why Pershing, I think, was so surprised too. Like, oh wow, I didn't know anybody else from Moff Gideon's ship was here. Because these are people that Elia Kane and Gideon. These were people that even post the Empire being defeated still chose to kind of continue on. So it's not like they were kind of against their will part of the Empire and were stuck there. Like, you almost think like for her to still be part of Moff Gideon's thing post the Palpatine being defeated and killed and everything, she's kind of a believer in the cause. So for her to suddenly be, I'm here for amnesty, I was like, man, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it was interesting with that, and then just the and how. And there's things like from the past episodes that I picked up on that, it kind of made sense that she could have been there, because, like when, Gideon told her to release, the Dark Troopers. If you watch, she kind of is like, are you sure? Like kind of a hesitant, like kind of moment. At first I thought she was going to be kind of like, undercover, and she might even be undercover for the rebels. We don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
It wouldn't be strange if it was that way. But then we really get into that relationship building. He's
Hmm.
you can tell that he really wants to work on this cloning program still, and obviously he doesn't have the resources. And all of a sudden she has, and this is where it starts getting really fishy for me. It's like all of a sudden she knows where to go to find this stuff. It's on this, a Star Destroyer that's in the docking bay, and she takes him right to it, and then kind of reintroduces herself. And this is where we actually get her name when they're on the Star Destroyer. But
Hmm.
that's when it started. I'm going, okay, something's kind of weird here. Why is she being so pushy for this? And I don't know if you had the same feeling, but I mean, that's how I was kind of going. Like, okay,
Yeah,
there's definitely something up now.
yeah. I mean, I think it was too coincidental that she was there. Um, Pershing's sort of reaction, like, "Hey, whoa, people from Moff Gideon's ship. That's a whole nother thing I wasn't expecting." And then, yeah, for her to suddenly, "Hey, I know what you can do. We're supposed to be helping the. It's all about helping the Republic, right?
Yeah.
This is what it's all like." It's kind of manipulating a little bit and kind of just nudging him along bit by bit to say, "Hey, it's okay to start cloning again. It's for the greater good, right?"
Yeah. So definitely, interesting on that point is we're starting to go in there. He's getting excited. He's finding the parts. He's sitting there, he's loading up, and she's telling him to take what he needs and everything. Um, and and even like before we got there, like this whole relationship, I should say the train scene was kind of interesting. How this robot kind of like is following them, and everything. And they really, and she says, "Take my hand." They jump out there, and that was kind of like the relationship pushing over the wall thing for them, and he trusts her.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're inside, and he's like, "Well, what if somebody comes and you hear that noise, and all of a sudden, and then they're caught." Um, I wasn't surprised that she was in on it, but I was kind of more surprised because I was thinking that maybe that he kind of was at first, trying to weed out, people that were helping, but then it was the complete opposite. So that kind of shocked me a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. It was just, it was a weird
Yeah, I
moment, but
was.
it wasn't
Yeah,
too
when the
surprising.
yeah when the authorities showed up, my initial reaction was, "Oh, she set him up to be captured basically by some undercover, Gideon Imperial types to basically abduct him out of this and take him back." Not that this was actually the New Republic police that were catching him in the act. So it definitely caught me off guard because I started to get really suspicious about her involvement and thought it was really her trying to get him out of off Coruscant and back to basically under under the control of Gideon or whoever's pulling the strings here for the cloning program.
And what's also interesting too about Pershing is that we've seen him throughout the episodes that he's been in. Is he's very, I want to say, persuasible, or very. I don't think his loyalty is straight with the Empire. I think this is somebody who
Oh,
may have been
mm-hmm.
forced to clone. I'm going to bring up an older picture, something we kind of went ahead there, but he's talking to the robots in Amnesty, asking if he's happy, asking if anyone's threatening him, and things like that. But if you remember, in the first episode where Mando comes in and rescues Baby Yoda, and he was like, he's not hurt, we didn't hurt, blah blah, he didn't want to kill, when they said they
Mm-hmm.
were going to kill the asset, he was like, no, that's not what we agreed on. He was very like, okay, I don't agree with that. The Book of Boba Fett, how quick he was, even though he was captured, how quick he was to kind of let them know this is what you're going into, when you're
Mm-hmm.
going on to Gideon's ship, and you're going to have to deal with all these everything. And then here, he's in the amnesty program, and you can tell he's kind of happy, but he still wants to work on his program. And now that
Yeah.
watching this, I think he really wanted to do things for good, but now we're going into this machine that they put him in after they caught him, and you know, you know, he pretty much he scrambles his brains.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Men in
Yeah.
Black.
So exactly. Yeah. No, and I 100% agree with you too. I think Pershing wants to do the cloning that the story talked about with his mother, and kind of his
Yes.
inspiration to who I believe, he alluded to her being, I think, a doctor or a scientist because he had dreamed of having a lab, his self one day, and then how she died and the cloning could have helped and stuff. So yeah, 100% believe he wants to do good with his research and wants to help people. If you think about it, at the time when he was growing up, the Empire was in charge. Good, bad, or indifferent, the Empire was in charge. So to become a scientist, you would go to imperial academies on Coruscant or other cities. So he was brought up in basically that academic structure, and then of course got recruited into the Imperial Army or whatever. So yeah, I don't think he ever joined the Imperials to rule the galaxy or clone for bad or anything like that. He truly was just kind of following the path and the best he could, because if he didn't do that, he would have never had his research to be able to do. And I was really surprised about the brain frying sort of a thing. Like, I don't know if they're worried that he has information that can be used against them, so they didn't even want him to have it. But then I almost wondered too, like, if the cloning program wasn't complete and this was the guy leading it, how are you going to complete the cloning program now without your main science
that's what
asset?
I thought was interesting too.
I don't know where it goes from here.
But yeah, it's just you're right, because they got the stuff that he needed, but did he pull files? Was he able to get in and pull files? Do they know? Are they like wiping his brain so that he knows what's going on? Are they resetting him back to the Empire way, or are they just completely just going to make him a vegetable? What is this next step? And I will say, when she eats that Empire biscuit, that's probably the most evil biscuit eating I've ever seen in my life. I mean, she was like, ready to go, but man, it was just unreal. Like, it really kind of it shocked me, the way they kind of ended that, because you got this neuralizer, that's what I'm gonna call it, and just she cranked it up. And what I thought was kind of interesting was how that guard was just like, okay, she was like, I want to stay behind. He's a friend. So here's somebody who's in the amnesty program. So what's up with that? Does she have did he kind of know what was happening? Is he involved with it? And I did see a funny theory out there, and I have to laugh a little bit, because someone said that she might have force powers, and kind of did the whole, these aren't the droids you're looking for.
Right.
But it's kind of interesting to see what's going on here. So that is interesting, but I just still think we needed that much of a story on that. I don't know, but
yeah, and it's looking back, I don't know if they could have done it different. Maybe they could have put like a little Pershing bit in like an earlier episode, and then like just keep kind of like going back and touching on his story throughout, and then capping it off here in episode 3, as opposed to like a legitimate full episode length of 30 minutes. We've had episodes that short. Basically, the meat of the episode kind of then bookended by Mandalorian story. I don't know. I feel like they could have potentially done that and spliced in some other Pershing like tidbits in the first 2 episodes. That way, we didn't have to spend 30 minutes resolving the story to make it feel a little bit more drawn out, I guess, or a longer period of pass, because it's multiple episodes. But
yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that all these little things, like the amnesty folks sitting around the table talking about, oh, I heard Moff Gideon got escaped, and all those rumors. I think dropping a little Easter egg, Imperial biscuit for us to follow the breadcrumbs for. So I mean, I think there was some good development and things there, but yeah, it definitely did feel like it took a long time to get there.
Yep. And I want to give a shout out to Rob and Aaron and Kate for watching. Rob did bring up a good point here too, but I kind of disagree with a little bit, Rob. I'm sorry. I have not been a huge fan. I'll bring the quote back up here again. But can we talk how the Mandalorian has completely overshadowed the equally good Bad Batch? To me, the Bad Batch so far, the best episode has been the Crosshair episode. We'll talk about that a little bit after we talk about the Mandalorian. But it has overshadowed it, because really the Bad Batch has just been, to me, a bunch of side quests and not really much of more. So it's kind of like, I know a lot of them are like that, but at least here with the Mandalorian, we were getting straight into like the meat and potatoes of things until this episode kind of took us a little roadblock and everything. But it's definitely was interesting that the longest episode was one of the slowest episodes, and the storytelling they went into there. And like I said, again, this was I call it my my Andor episode, but at the same time, it just kind of goes from there. And side quest build experience. It does, but so they're going to be pretty experienced by the end on there. But so we're finishing kind of up there. We see he's getting his brains fried. I'm still wondering why that other guard left. I still think he's involved somehow. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if Palpatine somehow has things getting strings pulled and stuff, or because it seems like everywhere he's got somebody on the inside or something going on, and way to kind of show everybody what's up. But I just thought that was weird. You're going to leave an amnesty, person that's in the colony there, and you're going to let them, with a machine like that, and just walk out, and they're the only one in there. So it was kind of interesting on that. And then, how are they going to explain this guy with the scrambled egg brains? Once they're done.
Yeah, like, oh, whoops, what happened? This thing was on setting 1. That should have never done anything. Oh, system malfunction, I guess. Like, what? I guess. Whoops.
So obviously, we're going to go back into the Mandalorian part now. So we get through all that, the little building and everything and all that fun stuff. So Mando and Bo-Katan, head back to the convert, where all the Mandalorians are hiding and everything. And it's pretty interesting because and I just completely just now oh shoot, this guy
Paz Vizsla?
Yes, thank you. Sorry everybody there for the brain fart there, but he is just a bitter Mando, because he obviously he lost to the Mandalorian once already, and obviously Bo-Katan, you can kind of tell there was tension there, even though you can't read facial expressions. I could actually kind of read a facial expression on that mask when Bo-Katan walked up, but you could tell he was not happy and did not believe they went to Mandalore. Did you notice that right off the bat? That tension obviously was obvious, but there's something building here, and
Oh, for sure. And it's anybody that's watched the Clone Wars knows that the Clan Vizsla and Clan Kryze, because if I remember right, Bo-Katan was part of whichever Vizsla, they had the Darksaber originally, in that kind of group, and then turned on each other. So there's definitely a lot of bad blood, I think, between those two clans. Clan Kryze is sort of like the monarchy line of rulership of Mandalore, and then Clan Vizsla is the one that created the Darksaber, who says Darksaber, whoever has that is meant to rule Mandalore. So somewhere along the line, somehow Clan Kryze took over from that. So it's kind of a Hatfields and McCoys thing here, I think. Probably for generations, these two clans not liking each other. So I definitely expect that to boil over at some point. I feel like we've been getting a lot of Paz Vizsla time here and focused on him just being angry and disgruntled about
what's really interesting. What's really interesting about this rivalry right now, too, is if you remember too, when Mando asked the armorer, do you know Bo-Katan? And the armorer pretty much blamed Bo-Katan for the fall of Mandalore. Somehow we still don't know how she lost the Darksaber. We still don't know how Moff Gideon got it, so it's kind of like, okay, what's going on with that? So obviously that tension is there. I will not be surprised, and I'm going to say this tonight, and for the people who are watching this, you can either tell me I'm wrong later or not, but I don't know who yet, but that armor, I have a feeling, is somebody we have met in the Clone Wars that despises Bo-Katan. And I know that's kind of broad, but that there's something there that I think when it happens and we find out who the armorer is, we're going to be like, oh my gosh, that I can see that now. That's my theory. And no, I have not seen any episodes. We did not get screeners for this. That is, I'm kind of seeing, I really think that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Bo-Katan here in a minute. But I see that happening. But obviously, Vizsla was like, hey, we'll see if you're right, if that water. So obviously, Mando goes in, gives this little thing of water. The armor dumps it in and sees that it's from Mandalore. So now they all know that, hey, we can go to Mandalore. Mandalore is not poisoned and everything else. but then it's really interesting. This is when this whole thing gets interesting. There's a couple things that, if people watched last week, there's one thing that really stood out to me. There was one Mandalorian, and again, we've always noticed that one pause on a character. And I use this, like, for example, in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, at the beginning, Riva, she was focused when she was a young Padawan. They focused on her for like a split second and then focused on everybody else. There was one female Mandalorian that kind of really they focused on when she walked into the convert and stuff. So I there's something with that. I don't know why that stuck out. I'm just putting it out here now. But now Bo-Katan is also bathed in the waters. So now she is part of their clan, in which she didn't seem too happy about. She knows I don't walk the way and everything else there. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And everybody's watching. I would like to know too, what are your thoughts on this? And, now she is part of that clan, but she's not the leader. She's no longer part of the Night Owls. They've already left. How interesting did this episode just begin with that moment?
Yeah, I mean, saying that she's now part of the watch, or no, it's not the watch. It's the no, it is the watch. Yeah, Children of the Watch. Sorry, I was getting like Game of Thrones. I was getting like Game of Thrones, the Watch references in my head at the same time. So like that can't be right. But yeah, no, that's interesting because so you have the redeemed Din Djarin who possesses the Darksaber. So by all intents and purposes, I guess every Mandalorian there should be like, Din Djarin, you're now in charge of everything. You're redeemed and you have the Darksaber. Bo-Katan, until she takes her helmet off, I guess she's still part of the group. But there's people within that group, maybe everybody within that group, that does not like her at all. So there's going to be some internal conflict and strife there, kind of even like, a little civil war within that group. So it's definitely setting up a lot of potential future conflict and some, Mandalorian versus Mandalorian fighting, which I know Bo-Katan said in the previous episode, she's tired of the Mandalorians fighting each other over, for no good reason.
Yeah.
So is she going to kind of swallow her pride? And now that she's seen the mythosaur and understands that the legends are real, that she's like, hey, there's something to this. I need to kind of tone it down and kind of put aside my aspirations to rule and, do my best to actually unite Mandalorians together as opposed to, being divisive.
And that's the other thing about, you talk about the mythosaur, she still hasn't told Mando that she saw it. And she's kind of keeping this to herself, which makes me lead to believe she's going to try to use this to her advantage. Obviously, the way is, the mythosaur rises and who tames it. And you notice she's getting a little bond with Grogu, who, again, we talked about before, can tame, obviously, animals. I mean, tamed a Rancor, made it go to sleep right next to it. It was so cute. And just, kind of, we know that he has that power. So are we seeing, and again, this is where all the, the short episodes, we want to keep seeing more. And so we know we know Grogu can tame animals. So is she going to try to use him to tame the mythosaur to then rise to power that way? But then again, you got the Darksaber, who, do the Children of the Watch actually, do they actually believe in the whole Darksaber thing? Well, obviously they do because they try to fight for it. But which way is it going to go? Who's going to weld what? Who's going to be? And, are we going to have like a little, special helmet thing for, Grogu? Is he going to get like the same way, and a big crocodile is going to come up and try to eat him? It's just very interesting that there's so much going on and everything. But yeah, Bo-Katan is up to something, obviously, and it's driving me crazy because I really am anxious to see what is going on.
Yeah, I feel like there could be a couple different reasons why. I mean, one, I don't know if she's trying to keep it to herself for, nefarious purposes. If she's keeping it to herself because she's almost like in disbelief and almost like questioning, like, did I really see that if nobody else saw it? Maybe I shouldn't tell the armorer that, hey, I saw the mythosaur, because that just sounds like oh, here's old Bo-Katan who lost the dark saber. Now she's got this scheme to say the mythosaur is real. That's how she's gonna come back to power. Like almost like, you know, if I go start telling everybody, hey, I saw aliens last night, it's like, oh yeah, sure you did. You know, it's almost like it's so unbelievable. Like you almost don't want to tell people because they're gonna think you're crazy. So it'll be interesting. Like I guess I'm holding out hope. I don't want to see Bo-Katan like turn and become like the enemy to Mando, and like we have to like fight her or kill her or something because I like the character. But it's definitely headed in a direction it's keeping me guessing, which is good. That's all you can
Yeah.
ask for, I guess, from a storytelling perspective. I cannot accurately predict what's going to happen next, and so that means great job to the writers of the season.
Yeah, it's been awesome here. And then I want to give a shout out real quick. Our own Return of the Jedi Gamorrean guard joined us. Steven.
Hey.
It's good to see you on here. Hopefully, maybe we'll get to see you again here soon at a convention. But it's always good to have you on here, Steven. So thanks for saying there. Rob popped up and said, isn't that kind of a lazy name for a mythosaur? But Rob, I got to tell you, that name has been there since 1977 when it came out in the comics. So, I mean, it's been there for a while. So I guess it's probably good not to change it. So
well, yeah, I mean, it may have. I guess I don't disagree. It was probably. I mean, back then it was probably a little lazy too. I mean, it's like avatars of an unobtainium was the made up mineral. Like, oh, it's unobtainable. Oh, really, really great, James Cameron. Great writing.
But one thing that was brought to my attention by our good friend JJ, who is also with us at #show. He sent me a message today and wanted us to kind of talk about something today, and it's something I didn't realize until he sent this message. And obviously, Bo-Katan has been the focus of a lot of this conversation, and now it's going to be the focus even more because every episode so far has ended on the focus of Bo-Katan. The first episode, she was sitting in her throne. Second episode was staring out into the water after the mythosaur. And then this last episode, she was the last one they focused on when she was being welcomed after she cleansed again and joining the watch. How interesting is that? Because I did not pick up on that until he said that. And then I went back and fast forwarded to the end of each episode. And sure enough, that was the focus point on each one. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So something big. This is going to be, I think, the Bo-Katan and the Mando story. But how's it going to go? How are we going to go? How's it? I mean, did you even think about that until I mentioned that earlier to you today?
No, when you mentioned that earlier, I was like, huh. And I tried to think back through, and I was like, okay, yeah, I remember the sitting on the throne and walking away. Well, yeah, I guess it kind of ended there. I remember the last episode with the water. I was like, yeah. And this one, I tried to remember if they focused in on the mythosaur symbol on the wall or her. I can remember technically what the last shot was. Regardless, I guess it was a very Bo-Katan focused final scene or moment there. And yeah, I can't believe it'd be coincidental. I feel like Filoni and Jon Favreau, they're too clever for that to just be, oh, coincidentally, oh yeah, it's just how we edited it together. And she was the last shot. Like, no, you do this on purpose. What that means again, I don't know. So I think that's great. It leaves me excited and anxious for, the next episode. Usually we do this on Monday. We have a full 2 days. Now we've got just a handful of hours, honestly, until the next episode drops. I'm very anxious to see what happens, and I hope they pick up and we don't do another offshoot about like, hey, what's Grief Karga up to, or somebody else. Let's focus on the Mando story now.
Yeah, so it's interesting the way a lot of these storylines are going and what we're getting into. Obviously, we need. Okay, the one thing, you guys know how I am about Baby Yoda. I've come to terms. He's there. Grogu, whoever you want to call him. Give me an answer to who saved him already. I'm done. All right, it better be in this episode. All right, let's see it. Let's get it done. Let's get it over. Who saved Grogu? I want to know. I'm tired of waiting. Let's just figure out what's going on with that. And then, but we also know too that the pirates are going to be focused on in the Skeleton Crew series. So we're starting to also pick up characters for future stuff, but obviously the rumors are out there. We got an episode later tonight. There's rumors that we're going to see a Rebels character here pretty soon, which, I mean, you can narrow it down. It's probably going to either or Ezra or even Thrawn. I still think Thrawn might, even though they're saying that he hasn't been casted yet. I'm they're starting to film Ahsoka now, I believe, or really working on some stuff. So he has to be casted somewhere. But I mean, what do you think that we're going to see in this next episode? What do you want to see? Obviously, I'm putting it out there. Give me the answer to Grogu. Who saved him? I don't care if it's Mace Windu. I don't care if it's a little droid. It could be Lobot. I don't care. Someone just commented about Lobot.
Yeah.
I want to know who saved Grogu. Damn it.
Yeah, I do. I do want to get the answer to the Grogu question finally, just so we can stop wondering and hypothesizing about who it is. And now we talked about this, I think, in the first episode recap. The one thing I really hope they do is any Rebels characters they introduce to help set up Ahsoka. I just hope it's done in a very natural storytelling way. It's going to be just very, I don't know, disjointed suddenly, like, oh, hey, Sabine just walks through the door, or, you know, Ezra's here on this planet randomly for some reason. Like, I don't know. I really want everything just to make sense with the story. And right now I'm having Sabine's the only one, I guess, because of the Mandalorian ties that I could see kind of into the current story arc and where it's headed. The Ezra thing doesn't mesh as well because it seems like, hey, we're very focused on Bo-Katan, Din Djarin, Mythosaur, Mandalore. It's very Mandalorian heavy. So Sabine, if they somehow get her introduced, I could see that being done well and be a cool touch to do.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, though, where I get with Ezra and Sabine, because this is where, it's going to be interesting. So we saw, 2 episodes ago where Mando is still struggling with the Darksaber. It's still heavy to him. He's still having problems wielding it. Well, I really doubt that Bo-Katan is going to try to teach him how to use that thing because she obviously wants to rule Mandalore again. If she does, I'll be shocked. But who are the only other 2 that really have gone through training on the Darksaber? And that's Ezra and Sabine. If you go back to Rebels in the episode where Kanan is teaching, Sabine how to use the Darksaber, and Ezra's being her sparring partner. So they're kind of going through all that. So I can see somehow that tying into this storyline. She's going to see, Sabine might see her struggling with it and say, okay, this is, how you do it, or we're going to get to that. But I really think Sabine is going to be a part of the story. And I think we'll see some of Sabine's family as well. And is it Posvis? Who was the one that, or not, I'm sorry, I'm getting horrible with names tonight. But the other Mando that, who I'm talking about. If somebody knows, please put it up there for me so I can get it. That was helping her train and kind of converted to their side once he saw things. There are rumors that actor is going to come back and reprise him in live action. So we got a lot of stuff out there. I think we're going to see a lot of Mandalorians. I mean, hopefully we're getting into what the Mandalorian is about, and that's about the Mandalorians. And kind of going from there. So, really anxious to see, what happens this week. And actually this week is the halfway point already because we're, only 8 episodes. So we're going to be at the halfway point. So I'm hopefully the halfway point is going.
Yeah, and speaking of side quests, the one thing, because I was not here, I was busy in the Las Vegas Sun last week, so I did not get to talk about it. I don't know if you and Spencer chatted about it or not, but I was very surprised on how quickly the IG-11 side quest that I thought was going to be an entire episode of him tracking down the CPU or the chip or whatever needed was essentially resolved in just a few minutes. Like, maybe the Jawas can find it. No, they can't find it. Well, okay, you got another droid I can use. Like it was. I don't know if there's gonna be more to the IG-11 story later because it seemed like they were definitely setting up something bigger there, and then it was very quickly just brushed aside and like, hey, well, R4 or R5 will do. Okay, cool. Come with me, droid. I'm glad R5 got his moment in the sun. He was a cool character and I like him, but I was really shocked about the IG-11 thing.
You go back to the old comics where R5 was force sensitive and purposely blew his motivator so that way R2 could go with Luke and stuff. But yeah, it was good to see that on there. There's just I'm just ready to go on this, and hopefully we get some good answers. I hope this episode I just want some action. Like I said, I don't need it. Andor again, everybody, don't get me wrong. I do not hate Andor. It's just not my story kind of telling. I would rather see lightsabers, blasters, TIE fighters,
Hmm.
all that stuff going at once, and then instead of that kind of backstory thing. But that's just me. It's always somebody likes something different, and that's fine. That's what Star Wars is about. It doesn't have to be all the same on that. Um,
Hmm.
but what's interesting with stories, so obviously the Mando, we talked a lot about the Mando, but we're now hearing that, you know, we don't know when the next movie is going to happen. Um, writers and directors are dropping left and right. There's a couple articles today about the new one that what's this again? I'm being horrible with names again today. Um, the writer from there left, and again, it's just I'm worried about this because I am one that loves to go see stuff in the movie theaters. Like I was excited when Rogue One they re-released that in the theater. I probably watched Empire like 6 times when it was in the movie theater. I even went back to back one day. It was just awesome seeing Star Wars in the movie theater. And
Hmm.
now, I'm hoping Celebration we get some answers and see what's going on with the movie lineup. But right now, it's not promising. I mean, I don't know about all you guys, but I'm actually concerned a little bit about the future of Star Wars in the movie aspect because everything right now is Disney Plus, and we're not seeing anything, um, coming. And it's just
Yeah,
it's so
and
I don't know.
and I don't know if it's a situation of there initially they were riding high with, hey, Mandalorian is Disney Plus and it's a hit. And I remember I think it was Investor Day when Kathleen Kennedy came out and started talking about Ahsoka, Rangers of the New Republic, which we know is in limbo, canceled. Who knows what they're going
Yeah,
to do? Um, I think that's also then when they talked about, Rogue Squadron,
Rogue Squadron.
um, Taiki Waititi's movie, just all these things. And we would constantly get announcements like, hey, the Game of Thrones guys are getting a trilogy. Hey, Ryan Johnson's getting a trilogy. Oh, well, now it's going to be Kevin Feige's going to get a movie. The guy from the MCU Marvel guy. It's just they keep announcing all these things. It's almost they announce them like so quickly before anything's really concrete
Yeah,
and far enough along to reveal it. Then they have to constantly cancel and they lose things, and it just looks like they don't know what the hell they're doing. Basically, it's painting the impression that they're confused and just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks because it only sticks for a couple seconds, and then we cancel it. Okay, this writer's gone. We're going to cancel this project. It's like that's maybe what Bob Iger's going to come in and be like, hey, we're going to refocus. We're going to figure out what we're going to do. We're not going to announce things unless in a very structured manner, like Celebration. We're committed to it, and this is for sure going ahead. We can't keep telling fans we're doing Rogue Squadron, and then 2 years plus of no news, and then oh, by the way, that's not happening now.
yeah,
It gives the impression that they're just making stuff up, and it's kind of disheartening, I think, from a fan's perspective.
yeah. And like Kat brought up a comment here, and I'll bring that back up too. And honestly, I'm kind of have to kind of agree with you right now. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 5 or 6 years because right now it seems like nothing is in the works, unless they're kind of you know, so trying to surprise us at Celebration that hey, this is ready to go. But honestly, I'm one that Ryan Johnson a trilogy. I know I'm going to get backlash from this. I know JJ's probably going to throw a book at me the next time he sees me. But I want him to tell a story that's not connected to anything, and I want it to be
Hmm.
his own Star Wars story and see what he does with it. Knives Out was great, you know, and I think that he could actually put together a good trilogy if it was his own story and not trying to follow anything else.
Yeah.
I'm at
No,
right
I
now. I'm
mean,
at the point where like, just give me something on the big screen, damn it.
yeah, no, I mean, I think anybody that like says that Ryan Johnson is awful or terrible director or writer or anything is, I guess, I don't say factually, 'cause it's still an opinion, but I would say they're blatantly incorrect. Whether it's Knives Out. I was a big fan of his the TV series he just had on Peacock, Poker Face. I enjoyed
Mhm.
that. Um, he was also the writer for Looper, the Bruce Willis, Joseph Gordon-Levitt sort of time travel movie that was pretty interesting several years back. So he's able to tell stories. He just wants to tell it his own way, which did not mesh well with the middle point of a trilogy using existing characters that people have grown up with for the last 30 plus years, that's not a good recipe for him to be successul.
Yeah.
I think,
You
to
know,
your point, in his own area, he could do something to be very successful with it.
yeah, I really think he could, and I'm anxious to see that. And obviously we got the Acolyte coming and things like that. And there's even some turmoil from there from, a former director that was let go who's suing,
Mm-hmm.
Lucasfilm now. So it seems like there's a lot just going on in the Star Wars world, and it's depressing because, fans, and not going to date myself or timestamp myself or anything here, but fans who have grown up with this franchise, we went so long with nothing. It was just,
Mm-hmm.
we had comics, and then all of a sudden we get, the prequels, and I loved them. There's obviously when they first came out, it was like, I don't know, and Jar Jar and all that good stuff. And then, after that, we started getting, stuff. Then we got the sequels, then we got Disney Plus, and then we got Obi-Wan, Mandalorian, and we got a lot. And yes, it is kind of like, wow, we got a lot thrown at us all at once. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, it's a good time to be a fan of content out there. You got the comics, you got the Disney Plus, you got all the video games, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all tying together. Now, the comics and stuff, some of there's some loose ends there, and you guys know what I'm talking about, Qui-Gon. Or not Qui-Gon, but Qui-Gon from the Clone Wars and how he pops up as a Force ghost. We got some kind of, canon discrepancies there. Overall, we've got a lot of great content.
Yeah,
Not
and
all
I
of it's
think,
been the best, but
yeah, and part of me thinks that, 'cause I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of, hey, I'm at Lucasfilm and I'm trying to figure all this sort of. I think the big struggle they may be having is, where do we set the movies that are the future of Star Wars? Do we try to pick up right after the sequel trilogy and then somehow try to explain where we're picking up from there? Do we try to interject things in, do we do like a Solo 2 and make it still part of the original trilogy timeline, but then have to mess with, hey, you can't break canon because it won't make sense for later movies?
yeah,
Or do we just go way in the past? I know a lot of fans would be very excited about an Old Republic
yeah.
uh, movie series. Can you go so far in the past that there's not established characters? You can kind of do your own thing, tell your own story, and make it so far disjointed from the original trilogy, the sequel trilogy, the Mandalorian, that you're not really stuck
Right.
trying to tell stories within that defined sandbox. I think that's what, similar to the Ryan Johnson conversations, we have to move so far out of the Skywalker saga of the
Yeah.
9 films that they can do fresh storytelling. Rogue Squadron probably was going to be tough to tell a fresh story because it was probably going to be right after the sequel trilogy, maybe even part of the original trilogy timeline. So now you're stuck with cameos and various other things. You
Well,
can't tell a fresh story potentially.
well, and the fact that the Rogue Squadron was named after Rogue One.
Rogue One, yeah. So
If
I
you
mean,
read the
it's
comics, that's how the Rogue Squadron formed their name. So it was so that obviously Luke gave them that name, and that's how you had all the Rogue Squadron form there. So yeah, that I would even be fine with let's go. And I'm not too big in the expanded universe. I really never dove deep in the expanded universe things, but make some side movies off the expanded universe. It can be its own thing. It can be,
mm-hmm.
we can do so much in, kind of have that. You can have different characters being Luke in the expanded universe. You can have, I know, sorry, I probably just rubbed a lot of people wrong there, but just like in Marvel, we're going to have different Captain Americas. We're going to have different, Spider-Man. We're already having that, so
Mm-hmm.
why can't we have that in the Star Wars universe? Now we already know that they can travel back in time now. Ezra has unlocked that gate, but then you're still dealing with the same characters. But yeah, it's time to get some new stuff in there, some older stuff that might relate into it. I know Acolyte's going to be back then. I think it's 100 years before the
Phantom Menace,
prequels,
yeah.
Phantom
Mm-hmm.
Menace.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
it's kind of at the tail end of the High Republic storyline, I think. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely options. And not everything has to be a trilogy either. You could do a
yeah,
one-off, you know, bounty hunter style movie. You could do like I mentioned, again, I'm a huge Han Solo fan, so I'm biased when I say, hey, there's plenty of Han Solo, Lando pulling
yeah,
heists and doing jobs, Ocean's 11 casino heist style movie. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I mean, there's definitely content and there's stories to be told. I think it's just finding the right creative team to put it all together. And so far, it seems like they're not able to do that because everything's getting maybe to like concept. Hey, here's my idea. Oh, this is terrible. We're canceling it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. Celebration. I'm anxious to see what's going on. There will be live streaming. I know that was talked about before. That at first it wasn't going to be, but they are going to be streaming a lot of the panels and stuff. So I know we'll be watching that and seeing what's announced and everything there. Anxious to see where the Bad Batch is getting ready to go. Like I said before, I've got I was lucky enough to see the first 14 episode or the first 14 because there's 16 or
16
14
total.
or 60 episodes, whatever. I haven't seen the last two. They did not give us those. So that's why I haven't talked much about the Bad Batch because I don't want to give stuff away until we get caught up to where everything is. But we still have that, and just real quick before we get off here tonight, so far my biggest complaint has been, again, I said this last week, was the Boba Fett story. It was like brought really attention to how Omega was this offshoot of Boba Fett, but yet nothing's really gone from that. We're back to side quest and races and everything else, to where we're not getting. To me, I just want to see more and more. Main story and not all these little things. I don't know. I've just the Bad Batch has not been really didn't really catch my attention.
And so since you probably don't remember exactly which episodes or which weeks, so the episode 2 weeks ago, the episode was a very crosshair heavy episode. Yes. And it ended with him basically gunning down the incompetent lieutenant who left Mayday to essentially just die there on the runway outside of the base. And I was like, okay, wow, okay, we're going somewhere now. Then the next episode is, well, the Bad Batch are going to go hang out on this little island planet with can't remember her name now, the like the smuggler archaeology lady. I mean, it wasn't a terrible episode. It's them kind of character developing into, maybe we don't go off on adventures anymore. Maybe we do settle down and raise Omega and let her be a child again. And obviously that's not going to happen. Something's going to make that plan not work. But it's like there's tiny little breadcrumbs. And so far they've been the crosshair specific episodes. Have been really the most interesting of the episodes. So I do hope that at some point over the final episode, they bring it all together and tell a compelling kind of story here.
And here's the thing with all these shows too. And, I talked a little bit about this with Spencer last week, is the fact that at what point do we say what happens to all these characters? I mean, yes, it's a big universe. I understand that. So they could still be somewhere else. But, let's take Ahsoka for an example. In The Rise of Skywalker, when Rey's laying down there and the voices of Jedi past are talking to her. So first off, does Ahsoka, we know that she's kind of in that path of not being a Jedi. Does she become herself what the definition of a Jedi again? And two is, supposedly all those Jedi have talked to her are dead. And that's why they were able to talk through her through the Force. So when are we getting to the point to saying what's happened to some of these characters? I know Rebels kind of did that, but it was like a feel good moment where Rex was on Endor. We got Hera and her son. Zeb and Kallus are, I'm guessing, in a relationship. It was kind of like that feel good moment of everybody kind of went on their own path, and then Sabine is waiting, and here comes Ahsoka, which I think that part is where we're going to start meshing everything together, and going from there. But at some point we're going to have to Rogue One things, and it's going to happen, and Omega and Baby Yoda and all this stuff. I don't know. It's going to have to take a dark turn at some point.
I mean, to your point, everything's a big galaxy. So there's places to be. Not everything in the, contrary to what Star Wars films would have you believe, not everything in the entire galaxy revolved around whiny Skywalkers off of Tatooine. There's more out there. The Grogu thing, they have the age factor, I guess, that even when Rise of Skywalker hits, he's probably still like a teenager or whatever. But your adults, Din Djarin, um, the Rebels crew, the Bad Batch, like all of them. Obviously, they're not in the sequel trilogy or even alluded to. That doesn't mean necessarily that they have to be dead. But yeah, they're at some point going to have to try and explain, and hopefully it's further down the line because I want all this content. I want to start killing off characters, next season or anything. But yeah, anytime you do stuff that's in between already established stories, you have to figure out, okay, how do we pick up from where the last left off, leading up into the future things.
So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where everything goes from this. And I mean, there's still one character this season we still haven't seen either, was Boba Fett. Where is he going to tie in somewhere in the Mandalorian? He's obviously doesn't want to be, running things anymore. And
yeah,
Cobb Vanth still turned into a prune.
My guy. But we did get it. We did get the Peli Motto did the Boba Fett name drop though in that episode when Din came to Tatooine. He was like, "Oh, you here? Pay Boba Fett a visit or take over for Boba Fett?" Or I can't remember what the specific line, but she did at least say his name. So, apparently he's still there on Tatooine hanging out. So hopefully they bring back some of those characters that we're anxious to see.
Yep, and that's still an interesting thing. Obviously Rob has put up a point here. Could Grogu be a clone? I mean, it is possible. I mean, maybe that's why they want his blood so bad. Obviously, they know he's force sensitive, and if we're trying to fix, make Snokes and Palpatines, you need force sensitive blood. But were they able to somehow, get Yoda's blood or something and kind of do that? Or I mean, we now know Yaddle was killed, and they could have tried to do something with her. So there is some opportunity. There is, I mean, it's a possibility. It hasn't been ruled out. There has been no, definite that he was not a clone. So you don't know. We don't know that. But anything else with Grogu this next episode, I just want answers. I want to know who saved them so we can move on from that story and get into the Rise of Mandalore. But with that, everybody, we're getting close to our time tonight. Great talk at the end here, especially with all the what ifs. That's what we need is a Star Wars what if series. I would actually
there you go.
be all about that. But again, I want to thank you all for watching. Again, I always like to talk about a little bit about mental health. Obviously, we're in a time where a lot of people are afraid to ask for help. People are hurting. People are going through a lot of tough times. We're in tough times right now in this world. My fellow vets, brothers and sisters, people who aren't vets, don't be afraid to ask someone if they need help, or if their everything's all right. I always say this: you never know. You could actually change their lives or even save their lives just by asking that question. Again, our doors are always open. If you need someone to talk to, please reach out to us. We'll try the best to get you the help that you need, some numbers and everything there. But remember, guys, do what makes you happy. Go out, be fun, find that outlet. Like I said, for me, it's collecting, writing, and cooking. There's ways out there to make yourself happy. And you got to find those. So again, everybody, remember, we lose 22 vets a day to suicide, and then we lose more to that non-vets as well every day. And one suicide's one too many. So if we can help save a life, everybody, please do so. Ask, if your friends seem different, just ask them if they're doing okay. Reach out to them. Everything there. But again, guys, everybody, thank you so much. Next week we will not be here unless somebody would like to volunteer to take my spot next week. I will actually be having surgery on Tuesday, so I will be out for a little bit on there. If somebody does want to fill in for the Nerdy Vet, let me know, and we'll all talk and have that happen. But again, next week I will not be on here, so I will miss you guys. But I will be watching The Mandalorian on Wednesday. I don't care how much pain I'm in. We're going to go through that, and then next 2 weeks or so I'll be back on the air as well with that. So, but again, thank you so much. You can follow us, Travis and myself, at the #show at Nerdy Vet. I always do this wrong. I'll just do it this way. Travis over here at Indiana Salone, me at Nerdy Vet 574. Make sure to check out our sponsor, TRG Toys and Collectibles, for your collectible needs. Again, they're going to start carrying Sideshow and Hot Toy stuff pretty soon. Very excited about that. Congratulations, Dennis, on being selected for that. And with that, everybody, Travis, you got anything else? Anything you want to rub in about your trip to Vegas before we get off here?
No. Just that, I did not win enough to not come back to work on Monday, so I'm back. But no, the only thing I have to throw out real quick is next weekend is C2E2 over in Chicago. I know Greg, like he alluded to with his surgery, will not be joining, but anybody that's gonna be out there, comment on the Facebook group or here in the comments. Would love to meet up and say hi to everybody out there as part of the group.
Yep. C2E2 is coming up. We also have ICCC. I always try to say it slow so I get all the C's in there coming up. Obviously, we've got Indiana Comic-Con coming up in May as well. August, Chicago Expo, which is looking to be a huge guest lineup. It's been pretty awesome with that. So a lot of conventions out there. Cincinnati Comic-Con coming up. So there's going to be a lot of conventions. I'm hoping, knock on wood, that I might make it down to Tennessee this year, but I don't know. It's going to be close to that recovery time. But who knows then. But again, thank you guys so much. Again, check us out, #show.com, on social media, #show. And again, everyone be safe out there. Take it easy. And until I see you again, may the force be with you.